welcome back to you for the love of stories.
Hi. I am really excited about this week. Like, really excited. This is the kind of story that I really wanted.
Yeah, we had that World War One thing last week that kind of
was
got
dark.
it kind of got dark.
Okay, I thought the black box was kind of dark too. I mean, that's the one with dead brides and just sad. Sad. And seriously, just call the police.
Oh, yeah. Well, that one I think that was kind of on par with the Weird Tales
Weird
things.
Tales, yeah.
So I'm giving that one a pass. I think that was kind of on brand. But we have something different. So I did pick this one because the name sounded cool.
Yes.
But I
haven't read it.
I have no idea what this one's about. So we're gonna find out now.
Okay. So this week we have The Sign of the Seven Skulls by A.L. Smith. It was in the Weird Tales 1927. I don't know which month though. I was working on it. But yes. And it's got a little phrase that it starts out with. Bullets had failed and I was at the mercy of those leering horrors.
Sounds Resident Evil to me. Let's go.
Okay. I stood looking back at the little village of Kronstadt. From the height, it looked more than ever like a fairy tale village with its high-peaked roofs and winding streets of stones. Even for that picturesque landscape of the Harz Mountains, it was delightful. A very masterpiece, and the grim old castle that brooded in silence over it might well have housed an ogre or some sleeping princess. Strange little land of fairy tale, the very place that gave rise to so many stories of the little people, living in its same tenor of ways and filled with ancient customs that made one instinctively gaze into the sky for winged dragons, flying carpets, or even witches on broomsticks. The people were as superstitious as ever was mortal race. They had begged me not to tramp the road to Kronstadt. They had begged me not to tramp the road to Kronstadt, and had held up their hands in horror over my insisting on taking the trail through the woods. No, no, mine host of the tavern had cried. Be not so foolish, for the woods are filled with awful things.
Okay, hold up.
What?
Where does this take place? Because this is sounding very old-timey.
Apparently the Harz Mountains.
Where's that? Did they say mine?
It actually says mine host of the tavern had cried.
Mine. Okay.
Yeah. So I think we're German area.
I was wondering if it was German. It sounded Germany.
There's other bits of this that kind of make me think, okay, Harz Mountains.
We should do this later. Let's get on with the story.
Okay, see what you've
I made
done.
a note.
Okay.
I made a note. We'll come back to it.
Harz is a highland in Germany.
All right, there you go.
All right. So, no, no, mine host of the tavern had cried, be not so foolish, for the woods are filled with awful things. And his wife, dear old soul, had clung to my arm with tears. But I was not to be turned from my course of action. The walk would take the better part of a day in the deep woods and give me even a better appetite than I already possessed. Besides, this was the land of romance, and I, for one, was not to be cheated of that. To their arguments, therefore, I turned a deaf ear and prepared to go. The good wife finally pressed upon me a crucifix, and in order not to hurt her feelings, I put its cord about my neck and the cross I buttoned under my shirt. I could feel it there now, and what was more to my liking, could also feel the heavy 45 under my armpit. I was curious as to whether a werewolf might bow to the cross, but not a bit doubtful as to whether his animal brother would respect the leaden pellets from the heavy gun. So protected, both physically and spiritually, I stood and looked down upon the little village, and then turning, I plunged into the wooded trail. I tramped until midday, and at a crossroads, perhaps I should say cross trails, I sat down and ate the lunch I had brought with me. The cross trails marked the halfway of my journey, and a few more hours would find me looking down on my destination. I lit my pipe, and finally, with regret, I left the delightful spot and took the trail to the left as I had been directed. The other was overgrown with weeds, and I made a promise in my heart that someday it would be explored. Tramping along, I let myself be lulled by the soft forest air, and in my mind I pictured these strange woods dark and forbidding as they were, with the actors of childish stories half remembered. Surely along the tiny trail ahead of me were walking the children, the lost babies, and the old witches' cabins would soon come in sight. Eagerly I looked for the gnomes and dwarves, and once a crackling in the brush brought me about to scan the forest for the sign of the wolf of Red Riding Hood fame. Soon I left the trail and sat down by a tree, soothed by the hum of insect life, and the day's heat I soon fell asleep. It was late afternoon when I sprang up and gazed at my surroundings. Angered at myself, I at once made for the path and turned down it, for I knew now that my sluggish sleep had made me late, and I was in no eager mood to be left wandering in woods I did not know through the evening and darker night. Hurriedly I paced the path with no more thought of the elven folk with which my fancy had peopled the woods earlier in the day. It was cold now. A biting wind had sprung up, and dusk had begun to fall silently about me, a fact that accelerated my speed in an endeavor to keep warm. The path ran and wound among the trees, and in the growing darkness, these lost their charm, and instead of hidden princes changed by a wave of a witch's wand into towering forest giants, they seemed more like the hideous monsters of some forgotten era, waiting to pounce on the unwary traveler who strayed from the path. It seemed, too, that behind me another presence paced, and glancing behind me in the growing dusk, I saw a white object melt into the trees on my right. Slowly I picked my way, glancing about me as I went, and was soon rewarded by seeing it again for a moment as it slipped between some tree trunks. Then I stepped across a little glade and, drawing my revolver, slipped behind a tree trunk and waited. A few seconds passed, and there stepped into view a monstrous white wolf that stalked across the tiny space. I fired, the deepening dusk being lit by an orange flame as my revolver spat lead, and the beast raced into the trees with a snarl that told me of a hit scored. But it hung grimly on, for several times I saw it gliding through the trees, although, owing to its caution, I was unable to get another chance to shoot. You see a wolf in the woods and you just shoot it? Okay. Sure.
I mean, they go in packs, man. You might get eaten. This is the old country. You know, we have wolves in the United States, but they're all out west.
That's true.
We don't have, like, wolves like where we are. I mean, we have, like, angry dogs and sometimes coyotes, but those are like mini bite-sized wolves.
And angry deer that also travel in packs.
They do. They don't exchange information when they hit your car, too, by the way.
They do not.
So go ahead.
Okay. Then, suddenly the path was crossed by another. I swore in my anger, for mine host had told me there was only one place where the trail was bisected by anything. Still, here was another path, well worn by the passing feet of a multitude for many years, bigger and broader than the one I had followed. Suddenly the question arose in my mind. Had I, in my first few seconds of wakefulness, retraced my steps? With this in view, I examined the broad path before me, and then turned to look at the one down which I had come. The darkness, however, had so covered the ground that it had vanished, and look as I might about me, I could not discover it. The moaning creak drew my attention from the ground to the air above my head, and I started back with an exclamation. There, only a few feet from me, was erected a gibbet, and upon it swung a dead man. The wind, which was rising rapidly, swung him to and fro like a pendulum, and the rope moaned and complained. So intent had I been upon the path that I had not noticed it until that moment. Poor fellow, I reflected. Had he perchance left loving arms and eyes that wept behind him? Or had he faced the world alone? Guilty or innocent, had he faced death bravely, or gone whimpering to the great beyond? Or had he cursed those who hung him? A rustle from his shoulders, and two little red eyes glaring at me turned away, turned me away shuddering. Crows, birds of evil omen, followers of executions. An old poem I had heard in my boyhood days came back to me out of the annals of years. We shall sit on his broad manly breast, and pick his eyes out one by one.
Caw.
I shuddered and turned down the broader path. Surely the old customs of ancient days survived here, if nowhere else. Hanging a man at the crossroads, my thoughts were brought back to earth by the cracking of brush to my right. Evidently the wolf was still there. The moon rose over the forest, and the clouds raced across the face of it in the rising gale. They took odd shapes. One was shaped like a coffin. Another took the form of some belated specter hurrying to keep some dark tryst on a ruined castle's battlements. And one, I remember that very well, changed its shape into a skull with the moon's pale rays glaring through the empty sockets. The shadows flung on the ground by the passage of these clouds also had dire and forbidding outlines. The entire scene was in keeping with the tales of the Hartz Mountains, of ghosts and hobgoblins, sheeted specters and hooded horrors, and all the evil spawn of hell that ran through the tales of ancient Germany. I hurried onward, hoping at every curve or at the top of every hill to catch the lights of the little town shining upon me, but instead the dark forest continued on, hemmed in my path. Several hours must have passed this way, and it was very close to midnight when I saw, shining through the trees, a light to the right of the path. Here was shelter from the coming storm. Crude and homely shelter, no doubt, but shelter for all its crudeness, and with a lightened heart I hurried toward it. As I approached, a broader beam of light showed that someone had entered or left, and as I met no one along the pathway as I hurried up, I concluded that person had entered. To my wonder on approaching, I found the unmistakable outlines of an inn. How very good it looked. I pictured the warmth and coziness of the great room within, for I was cold and chilled by the night air. I paused with my hand on the doorknob and looked at the crazy little signboard overhead. The moon came out from behind the clouds and sent a broad ray across it, and there, arranged in 2 rows of 3 each, with a larger one in the center, were 7 skulls. After the events of the evening, I was somewhat shaken by the sight of those 7 little emblems of mortality that grinned down upon me in their deathly mirth. But as the rain was beginning to come down in torrents, I shrugged my shoulders and went in. Mine host might have his gruesome little joke, but his fire was what I craved now. And if it was good, why the sign would be perhaps the center of a tale about the roaring fireplace. Slamming the door against the wind that pushed with 1,000 tiny hands as though demanding admittance, I stood inside and blinked. The rain and darkness out of my eyes. The great fire roared up the fireplace, lighting the room with a vivid, fitful glow and showing me the contours of the several guests that were gathered near it. Ordinary peasants and foresters they all seemed to be, and mine host, in white apron and cap, came smiling toward me. "Welcome, mine friend," he said in a throaty whisper. "The storm is indeed a bad one, and you are very fortunate to have made my door." While thanking him for his offers of assistance and hospitality, I looked at him carefully. His throat, I noticed, was wrapped with a heavy white cloth, sure sign of a bad cold, and this explained his queer way of speaking. His eyes protruded fearfully from his face, a sign of inward goiter, so I had heard. But altogether he was a very kindly appearing person, that I followed him with thankful heart to the fire's warmth, the others making room for me. Food there was none. So I must perforce content myself with the remains of my lunch, to mine host's utter sorrow. However, as he brought me some really good Rhine wine, I could not object. His explanation was that this time of year his guests were scarce, yet for several days he had had such an influx that he was eaten out of house and home. As I had plenty of food left over, I did not object, and I was telling him not to worry himself when their scratching began at the door. The tavern keeper crossed to it hurriedly and swung it wide, admitting as he did so the great white wolf that had stalked me through the woods. "My dear little girl," he cried, "thou art overly late, surely. I have been very lonesome without thee." "Mine dog, mine hare," he continued in explanation. "Savage to some, yes, but to me very gentle." He stroked the great white head lifted to him. "But what is this?" he cried. "Ah, my little darling has been wounded in the shoulder. See, mine hare, see how the blood has run. Ah, those charcoal burners with their guns. Nothing is safe, nothing." And he ran for warm water and towels to bathe the wound. I believed it better to keep silent as to my share in the episode and sat watching him. The beast whimpered and cried, and then, with her master's back turned, she swung upon me, her red eyes filled with hate and anger. I loosened the pistol in its holster, for dog or no dog, the great creature would die did it rush me. However, it went to the fire's opposite side, as soon as the wound was dressed, and there stretched out at full length in the heat. My frugal repast being now finished, I fell to studying the different travelers at the inn. There seemed something odd about them that I was at first unable to place, then it dawned upon me. The costumes, even in this very old world, they seemed out of date. The costumes of a century or two ago. I was delighted this was romance. I could not see their feet on account of the shadows, but I pictured them as being encased in long hose running to trunks, and surely those capes in the corner were of a pattern. "Ah, you sleep," came the innkeeper's voice. "You are tired, then. Come, let me show you to your room, mine guest."
Jawohl.
It was true indeed that, soothed by the soft gutturals and the fire's glow, I must have slept, so I allowed him to light a candle and show me up the narrow stairs in the back of the great room to my bedroom. The rain had ceased, but the clouds still ran across the moon, drawing weird and fantastic shadows across the ground. Underneath me I could hear the voices and an occasional creak from the crazy sign. I bolted my door and sat by the window, watching their queer designs. Sleep seemed to have left me, and the room was bitterly cold, yet I did not mind either of these things, so engrossed had I become in the wild night scene without. Suddenly a scratch came to the bedroom door, bringing my thoughts back with a snap to the present. The great white wolf or dog had followed me. I sprang up and made sure of the door fastening, and at the sound of my footsteps it padded away limpingly. Poor beast. I was sorry I had shot at it now, but I had no inclination to explain matters, especially in that narrow room. I went back to the windows and stood looking out. Suddenly the candle behind me started to go out. With an impatient oath, I turned about. The keeper had evidently given me a very short one, as he thought I would soon be asleep, I thought. But no, the candle was still quite long, and yet it was dying slowly as if for want of oxygen. Lower and lower went the light, and then suddenly flickered and went out. Quickly I struck a match and went toward the candle, but dropped the match when something seized my arm. At almost the same instant, something else seized my leg, and then I was grasped by numberless little hands in the dark. How can I describe the fight in the narrow room? I was filled with disgust and loathing as well as horror. Little creatures they appeared to be that tried to bear me down by weight of numbers. I sent my fist into faces and felt teeth loosen under the driving blows, hurled some from me and heard them strike with crashing force against the sides of the room, and I cracked skulls with the butt end of my revolver. Still I was forced back and back, for their number seemed legion, and then, weak and worn out, I was forced to the bed and bent back and back until I was flung upon it. My shirt was torn open in the struggle, and I bled from a number of tiny wounds, yet still I fought grimly on with horror in my mind, horror of these unseen foemen. As my back touched the bed, the moon sprang out from behind a cloud and lay in a broad beam across me. The tiny silver cross caught and reflected the rays, and suddenly, as it had commenced, the attack was withdrawn. My foeman vanished, if you can call people who were never, not even in the moonlight, visible, vanished. And slowly, as I lay, spent and panting on the bed, the candle began to glow and finally sprang to life. Slowly, I staggered to my feet and stumbled toward the door, seeking the companionship of those below. Under my feet, I felt bodies perfectly invisible to me, even in the lamplight. It never occurred to me until later that those below should have heard the row going on over their heads, or that even the dullest ears should have detected the uproar to which the smashed and broken furniture gave testimony in that narrow room. With weakened steps, I made my way down the dim hall and narrow stairs, and at the last turn I saw with a glad heart the great room leap into sight. "Mine host!" I cried, "mine host!" But then, after I descended the few remaining steps with a rush, my words choked in my throat, and I staggered to the wall where I stood in horror. The room was lit by a red glow that seemed to have no source. The fire, or for that matter any fire ever built by man, could not have made the awful glaring red that filled the entire room. It seared and burned into the brain, bringing out every detail with startling distinctness, and the travelers who now swung slowly around to face me were not human. The faces were the faces of those long dead, dead that lived, the undead of a century long past. Those clothes were the doublets and hosen of long ago. Long, wicked swords hung at sides. The faces were skulls picked clean and white by the grave worm in moldering tombs. Only the sockets were filled with that reddish glare of hell that pervaded the entire room. The innkeeper's eyes still protruded from his sockets, but the bandage of a few hours earlier was gone, and his neck was twisted and broken. The face was that of a newly hung man, with the horror of death still upon it. Under my horror-stricken scrutiny, the lineaments changed and it became a skull, a horrid, grinning skull like the others, only the twisted neck remaining awry, and the vertebrae showing jagged beneath the leering death mask.
Nice. I like it. Let's go.
A growl brought my terror-filled eyes to the white wolf that sat by the fire. Slowly it stood up on its hind legs like a trained animal, and then hellish and terrible a transformation took place. The body grew to a greater height. The long, cruel snout vanished. The beast-like properties were slowly banished one by one, and human lines took their places until a girl stood glaring at me. A girl, a demon from hell's darkest pits with eyes of reddish hate, a werewolf, one of the truly undead. I crouched in my corner as the awful faces turned toward me and drew my weapon. The werewolf moved toward me, its right arm dangling. And then I sent a shot after shot into the thing, to no avail. Bullets had failed, and I was at the mercy of these leering horrors. In fear and horror, I ran my hand up my bosom, toward my throat, and felt beneath my trembling fingers the tiny cross. Swiftly, I tore my shirt open and held the emblem toward them as I cried, "Back! Back, you fiends! Evil I fear not!" The wolf recoiled, and the faces of the others turned toward each other as though in whispered consultation. So Death took counsel with a madman, waving a silver cross, faced his ranks. Slowly they arose and came toward me and formed a hideous circle in front of me. The things had decided, I suppose, to frighten me into dropping the little cross, and then I felt my senses going. My hand was trembling, and dark little motes began dancing before my eyes. The walls reeled about me, and the only solid substance in the universe was that leering crowd of death masks, with the white hate-filled face of the fiend in girlish form that ringed me in. The red light seemed to glow, and then to fade as I fought for the mastery of my mind. A white glow flooded the scene. Somewhere, I seemed to hear a cock crow, and then, as I fell, I heard a shriek as of some baffled fiend who hears the fall of a curtain of safety between it and the victim upon which its claws have been so nearly laid. Late afternoon had come when I opened my eyes and found myself on a rude cot in entirely different surroundings. An old man, whose face was kindly, rose from the fire and came toward me with some gruel in his hands. "Drink this and sleep," he said. "You are in safe hands at last, my friend." For several days I tarried with the charcoal burner and his stalwart son in the rude little shelter they called home, and drew from them the tale of the inn and its occupants that I now set down. For years, the inn had lain on a well-traveled thoroughfare in the Harz Mountains, and well along in the 16th century had been the stopping place for many a noble and knight. Then Karl the Terrible had bought it and gathered about him a crew of murderers and slayers. He was credited with having traffic with the devil, and his only sister had surpassed him in all evil, finally becoming, so the story ran, a werewolf. Travelers were murdered by his creatures and their bodies hidden in the cellar. Tales of screams and cries were circulated until it came at length to the baron of the district, one Erlaren of Kronstadt. He, at length, with a goodly gathering of men-at-arms and knights, had one day suddenly appeared at the inn and captured Karl and his men. The sister had escaped. The trial had been swift and sure, for very little digging brought the bones in the cellar to light. Punishment had followed as swiftly. The many followers had been tied to the beds of the inn and burned alive in its conflagration. Karl was taken to the crossroads and hung so that all might see and fear, but the sister was never found. The road fell into disuse, even as the great castle at Kronstadt had crumbled and become dark. Yet the ruins of the inn, blackened and seared by the purging fire, still contained evil qualities, and there, night after night, had gathered the evil crew for ghastly carousals. Karl's body swung at the old crossroads until moonrise, when he descended and joined his old companions, and often the white form of a werewolf was seen as it slipped between the tree trunks toward the den of hell. In the blackened ruins I had been found, for the shots of the night before had been heard and investigated by the two charcoal burners. Perhaps I dreamed the horror. Perhaps the people of the Harz Mountains are merely superstitious yokels who frighten themselves with needless tales of horror. Perhaps you, the reader of this tale, will smile, but I wonder what made my hair turn white, and why the little marks of claws upon my body have never left. I, for one, have never gone back to that haunted area, and I place my faith upon the beliefs of the strange peasants of the Harz Mountains. The end.
Yeah, that was good.
I know!
I like that. Yeah.
That made me happy to read.
Yeah, this is very classic.
Oh my gosh.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I just have to, so I thought the body hanging in the gibbet was fascinating at the crossroads.
Okay, yeah. But that's not Karl.
It could be Karl.
It could be Karl.
It could be Karl.
But the thing is, when you're in a gibbet, you're not hung by the neck. You're just put in a cage and you're hung there to basically,
Well, I'm pretty sure he was hung first and then put in the cage.
Why do you
Like
even-
the body was just left there.
Really? Why? Did they do that? I thought the gibbet
Okay.
thing was that you hang them and then you just starve to death or you get eaten by the crows or whatever.
So check this.
All right.
Superstition and folklore. It was believed that the four paths of the crossroads would confuse the ghost of the deceased, preventing them from finding their way home to haunt the living. The crossroads also served as a boundary between communities, where it was thought the spirits could be bound or immobilized.
I gotcha. So therefore, if they left their body, they wouldn't know which direction to go to.
Yes,
So they're just
kind of
stuck
be
there.
stuck. Which it kind of
All
makes
right,
sense
all right.
now when he was
Okay.
talking about going to the other village and everyone's like, no, don't walk there through the woods. Oh, sorry. When he was like, no, don't walk there through the woods because he would have to cross the crossroads where the ghosts hung out.
Right. I like that. No, I like that crossroads thing. See, the only thing I know about crossroads generally is, the Robert Johnson crossroads, it's that Delta Blues thing. You know this story, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So but it makes sense that whole concept would have come from the old world. That's not an American thing.
Oh, no.
And it goes much deeper than that. Yeah.
I totally went on a deep dive then into YouTube videos and such, and I'm going to go down a lore rabbit hole now at this point afterwards, because there is this huge mythology behind crossroads that we're talking goes back to like Greek and Roman mythology. That
would make sense, because what were the Romans famous for doing?
It was like Hermes and
building roads.
Hecate. I think she's a goddess of death.
Sure.
So
why not?
Dude, yeah. So I think I'm gonna have to like deep dive this week. I'm kind of excited.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, moving on. This was published in 1927.
Yes.
All right. Dracula influence.
Oh, when was Dracula published?
Well, that would have been like in the late 1800s. I want to say 1890s. But my point is that the movie hadn't happened yet. The Bela Lugosi movie. I think Nosferatu happened in the 20s. And I don't remember if there's a version of Dracula before Bela Lugosi. The Universal thing. That was in the 30s.
So 1890 was when the book was published. And then we've got 1931 with the Bela Lugosi as Count Dracula. So it'll come about 4 years after this.
Yeah, the movie would have come out 4 years after this was published.
Nosferatu was 1922.
There you go.
Okay.
Count Orlok.
Yeah. So Count Orlok was 5 years before this.
Okay. I'm always interested in like what's influencing what. But the thing is, I feel like that folklore of, haunted places out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, that's what Bram Stoker would have been drawing from when he wrote Dracula in the first place.
Yes, among other things.
Yeah. So when this was written, this was very much in the zeitgeist, if you will. I just think it's interesting because, we haven't, 100 years later, we have a completely different set of lore that everyone just knows intuitively,
And I think that's what just delighted me about this, because I feel like there was Crossroads lore that I didn't know. And that was delicious.
Oh, yeah. There's, holy crap, now there's a whole lot that I don't know. So I know that there's a rabbit hole waiting if I wanted to hop down that one. No pun intended. I walked into that one. Sorry, everyone.
I was thinking Alice in Wonderland, but whatever.
Yeah.
So yes, and we finally got a story where the author, it actually happened to him. He wasn't
first person.
Yeah,
and he's not crazy.
Yes, although I really like at the end where he's like, you can say I dreamed it. You can say I was just being silly, but I'm siding with the folk tales at this point.
That seems more rational to me. Mm-hmm. That's a very rational response. So I'm going to say reliable narrator on this one.
Yes. Yeah. That's a nice change.
Yeah. All right. So we know this happens in Germany. That got settled. Very good. Mm-hmm. He's got a .45 revolver that he's carrying around. Likely, I'm thinking it's probably a Colt Peacemaker. Not that any of that matters. I just thought it was interesting.
So do .45 revolvers, do they actually light up when you shoot?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Because he mentions that. The bullet going towards the wolf lit up the and I'm like,
yeah.
Does that really happen?
The thing is, a .45 bullet's actually pretty big.
Okay.
It's a big cartridge compared to other pistol cartridges. So, and it's got a lot of stopping power. So, good choice for taking to these.
For taking into haunted woods.
Exactly. Assuming that it works at all. But no, I mean, when it goes off, it'll actually spark out. And especially older, we're getting really technical here. We're getting out in the weeds.
No. I like the weeds though. It's private.
Yeah.
I like the weeds. That's private.
older powder that they would have packed into the cartridges would have smoked more and also created more like spark and flame behind it. So yeah, it's likely that muzzle lit up when he fired it.
Oh.
Okay, so yeah, I was just wondering if it was a peacemaker, since it would have been really, actually now that I just thought it was good. It's a cowboy gun, right? If he would have taken that with him. It never says like when the story takes place. It was published in 27, but it can take place anytime before that.
Yeah. I just hear Colt Peacemaker and I'm thinking A Christmas Story with the
Red Rider?
Yes. Because that was his peacemaker.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, it's a little.
You'll shoot your eye out.
Yeah. Okay. I enjoyed your accents that kind of slipped in and out of accents.
It was written that way.
I
That
know.
was the best part.
Yeah, it's actually-
It was actually written that way.
Okay, now that is something that I noticed with some of like this period, because Lovecraft does this too, where he writes it out the way that you're supposed to speak it. And it's always like backwater kind of people.
Well, that happened in the Ooze too, where
that's right.
it was written in Cajun. Apparently, that's its own language.
Yeah,
The way it was spelled, it's definitely its own language.
right. Yeah, no, that's fine. I just thought that was interesting. Yeah, so when you were talking about when he was getting attacked, by the invisible whatevers, did I hear it right that they were supposed to be like small somethings?
Like little people,
Little people.
invisible people. Because he talks about like he can feel their claws, and he's smashing their skulls with the revolver, and he's stepping on tiny bodies.
See, that's
So-
weird because those aren't the guests that turn out to be ghosts later. This
No.
is something else entirely.
And there's hundreds of them.
yeah, this like the little gremlin
Yeah.
or hobgoblins,
I am totally looking to see if that's like
a thing.
yeah, because Terry Pratchett has the We Free Men, the
yeah.
little blue guys.
Those guys are tiny.
I'm wondering if this is something like those. At least that's what came to mind.
Yeah. That's a good point. I've seen, okay, so what came to my mind during that whole thing, right, was actually if you ever read up on sleep paralysis,
Ooh.
and you start to see like how that was attributed to back in the day, like demons like sitting on you and holding you down and that kind of thing, before we understood what sleep paralysis was. That's what came to my mind. I'm like, oh yeah, except for like the scratching and ripping open your shirt, and that's a little spicy.
Kobolds. They could be kobolds,
Oh yeah.
which usually they're more helpful, but you can have they're little entities.
Yeah.
And I
yeah.
feel like when I was doing some of I was researching Iowa folklore, they had little creatures too that they had brought over from Germany.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because this whole part of the country was very heavily German settled.
No, I definitely, yeah, it's a household spirit, which, could be an invisible inn. And apparently, since the inn is infused with evil, the little creatures would be infused with evil too.
Sure. Or they are at the command of
Of the innkeeper.
the innkeeper and the minions and the skulls, the seven. It's very
Seven
good.
Skulls. I want to know who the Seven Skulls are now.
Oh yeah. Well, I thought they were like Carl's guys.
Carl's minions.
Yeah, the guys he put together to wreak havoc and death and destruction and all that stuff. They were just his boys. So the werewolf.
The white werewolf.
The white werewolf.
We
So
are not doing werewolves.
okay. So anyway, so she, she turns into like the woman werewolf, and you mentioned Terry Pratchett, right?
Yes.
And I'm thinking of Angela
Yes.
and from the Terry Pratchett books, and my first thought was, so is she naked? Does she actually is Does she like actually like have apparel on when she turns into human form, or is she just there with like a collar on, or what?
Well, in the drawing that's in the front of this, she has a dress on.
All right. So she materializes her dress.
Yes. Maybe that's why she's white. Because, you know, could she be wearing a white dress? Like a phantasm thing.
I get it.
Lady in white style.
Okay. So then her clothes turn into like
Fur.
yeah.
Which
like
makes
a
sense.
person. I don't know.
See, okay, that actually makes the most sense to me, that when a werewolf changes, the clothes turn into the fur.
Sure. It's all supernatural anyway. But that also means that the appearance of the wolf form would depend on what you're wearing.
Oh, could you be a wolf that's like white on the top and has a pair of black pants on?
Exactly. Like what if you're wearing a tux? Your werewolf looks a little bit more like a husky.
Or a penguin.
Yes. Or, what if you're, I don't know, if you're wearing like one of those frilly like cowboy jackets with the stuff hanging off.
Oh, the fringe.
Yeah, like all the fringy stuff.
Then you'd be one of those mop dogs.
Yes.
Ooh, or if you have a puffy dress, you turn into a poodle.
There you go.
A well-groomed poodle.
All this makes sense. It would just be an ill-tempered, bloodthirsty poodle, a werepoodle.
Dude, poodles can be scary. I
know.
can see that.
Attack poodles, like in Monkey Island.
Yes.
Vicious attack poodles guarding the governor's mansion.
I knew poodles should never be trusted.
Wonder if Elaine trained those poodles.
She probably did.
I like Elaine. Mm-hmm. Yes. All right. Also, we mentioned this before. Gibbets rule.
They are a little scary.
They're freaky. When you think about it, they're freaky. Like when you actually like sit and think about like what they are, especially if when people are just put in them and left to die. Now, what I'm interested in, I only know about gibbets from what I've learned from, playing video games and watching, movies and stuff, right? I don't know any actual real history about it.
Isn't there a guy in a gibbet in Muppet Treasure Island? I thought there was a corpse singing from a gibbet.
Was there?
Very beginning, where they're doing the pirate song.
Maybe.
The sea shanty
Well, they have
thing.
shiver my timbers, shiver my soul.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, they have singing skulls, when they're burying the treasure. That's a good question. But you had mentioned, like, when you're executed, like, you're hung, right? Do they put your body in a gibbet to be hung? Because I know they did that off of London Bridge.
Yeah, because
but
otherwise...
were they in gibbets after they were hung? More likely just to protect the body
from getting torn
apart
yeah.
by wildlife or something, So,
no, I think you were hung first, and then the dead body was put in the gibbet as a... And there's not just the Crossroads mythology. There's actually that idea of, deterrent. It's a deterrent for further criminal activity.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's for display.
Yeah.
For sure.
But also it's kind of like adding insult to injury, because now not only are you dead, but you didn't get a nice Christian burial.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's like, haha. I don't know. If anybody in the UK is watching this, we would love to know about, execution display with gibbets. Because clearly you know all about it.
Were they always hung at crossroads? But, then you have the pirates that were hung in the ports.
That's true.
Which are technically its own kind of crossroads, so maybe.
Did the bridge have something? Or is it just London Bridge was just heavily traveled, so it was going to make the maximum impact? Or was it because it was crossing water and the spirits would be trapped there too?
Ooh.
I'm not going down that road. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
We'll hit the paranormal stuff later.
I'm just saying, man, it was really cool in Uncharted 4 with all the pirate gibbets, man. That was sick. That was so good.
Okay, Uncharted 4 was awesome anyways. That was almost as good as like Goonies when they play the bones and you've got this whole bone organ.
Well, that's how I know how to pronounce it, gibbet.
Ooh.
And not give it because,
Because the movies told me
yes,
so.
Yes, because Nathan they have that conversation about that in the game. I think it's pronounced gibbet. Is it?
better learning through video games.
That's right. Passive learning through video games.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Naughty Dog.
Edutainment.
All right. Now that was pretty good. I like that one.
Yeah,
There was good supernatural stuff. I love the skulls. I love like that they, that they just have this whole like ghostly skull persona thing, and their skulls are on the door. That was bonkers.
It was a very satisfying read, and
Okay, so
Yeah.
were their skulls put on the door by the guy who came and cleaned everything up, basically as a warning?
well, the
Or is that
skulls
just
were
like-
just on the sign. As far as I can tell,
They're not
it's
real
just
skulls.
like-
They were just carved on the sign?
yeah, the
okay.
sign had a picture of it had one skull in the center, and then there were 2 rows of skulls
I gotcha.
around it.
Okay, now that makes sense. Mm-hmm. It was like the Skulls Boys Club. It was like a Ren Fair style biker bar.
Okay, Ren Fair style biker bar, but you have the one badass chick that can take anybody else in the bar because apparently she was the most evil out of them all.
Yeah, that also means she was probably the most slutty.
But she could kick any of their butts. She had her choice.
She was a dog. Werewolf.
Werewolf. I know what I'm watching tonight.
Do you have anything else?
No.
This is pretty good.
This was a good pick. I'm glad you found this one.
All right. Fantastic. All right. So
We'll see what we find next week.
we've got more
I've
coming.
got a stack.
We got more coming.
I'm so excited.
Heaven help me from what I've chosen. So hopefully it's not too crazy.
You have done pretty good so far.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely been interesting, and I kind of like there's stuff mentioned in here that I never would have known otherwise. Like the whole Crossroads thing.
Yeah. That is
Totally worth it.
That's legit interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, oh my gosh.
If you've got a book on Crossroads, leave it in the comments. I will totally read it.
Yeah. All right. So until next time. Yeah, we'll see you guys later
Night.
For the love of stories.
For the love of stories.
Bye.
Bye.